Hey there, this is Michael Stone back again with another tournament review. This is the first recording I'm making since we rebranded this project Red Club University. So to commemorate that, I'm wearing a tweed jacket, I've got my elbow patches on, and I'm smoking a pipe. And I'm probably going to give you all Fs, so look out for that in your report card. The tournament I'm going to do today is the Red Club Championship. The Red Club Championship comes at the end of every Red Hot Poker Tour season. We just finished up season 28, so this is the season 28 Red Club Championship. It usually takes place on the Tuesday after the live Tournament of Champions. The Tournament of Champions has a prize, usually a buy-in to a large World Series tournament or another tour tournament, and the Red Club Championship has a similar prize, the buy-in to the tournament. It's played online at Party Poker, and it differentiates between a regular online poker tournament in that there is only one prize. Normally, in a online tournament, there are, gradations of prizing. If you just make the money, you usually win your buy-in back. If you win the tournament, you usually win, 30-40% of the prize pool, depending on how many people enter. In this tournament, the prize was one person won a buy-in into a $1,500 World Series event, and second place through everybody else won nothing. So that will affect how we play the tournament, and I'll explain that later on. So this was the first tournament we wanted to do since coming up with the idea of Red Club University, since it was the next marquee tournament on the Red Club schedule. And we were hoping that whoever won the tournament would be amenable to contributing their hand history so that I could review it and you could all view it later on. I was a little pessimistic that the person who won would want to share their whole cards. This being a new program and all, some people are skeptical of the idea, and I wasn't sure that they want to do that. So to take that out of the equation, I decided to go ahead and win the tournament myself and guarantee that you would have a video to view of the tournament. So as I was saying before, since the tournament is extremely top heavy in its prizes, in its prizing I should say, you want to play it a little bit differently than a regular tournament. In a regular tournament, if for example this tournament started with 40 people, and a tournament that starts with 40 people normally would pay, let's say, 5 places, or if it's being generous, 6 places, something like that. And if you made it to the final table, you still have an outside shot of making it into the money. If you come into the final table as the short stack, one lucky double up, or maybe at the most 2, and you can move up to 6th or 5th place, and then you can sneak into the money that way. In this tournament, if you made it to the final table as the short stack, you have, I would say, absolutely no chance of winning the prize. Because, well, mathematically you do, but it is very, very unlikely. And the reason is this: if you come as a short stack, you basically have to leapfrog over 9 other people to get to first place prize. And which basically means you have to win a whole bunch of coin flips. And coin flips can be 60-40s, they can be 50-50s, and it's hard to win, it's hard to double up let's say 9 or 10 times and avoid the one time you go broke, which ruins your chances of winning the prizing. So that being said, you don't want to come to this tournament as a short stack. You want to come in as one of the top 3 stacks, preferably the big stack, if you can make that happen. So what I've decided to do the last 4 or 5 times I play this tournament is play crazy aggressive early on, do a lot of bluffing, try to play some big pots in good spots, hopefully get a double up early, and if not get that double up early, then I'm fine with busting out, within the first half an hour, 45 minutes in the tournament. I figure either I bust out in the first 30 minutes, or I get a big stack early, and I can cruise my way to the final table. The last 4 or 5 versions of the Red Club Championship, I used that strategy. A couple of times, it did not go so well, and I got my money in a bad spot, and I busted out, say 37th out of 40 people. In season 26, however, it worked like a charm. I doubled up early, managed to steamroll the table for a while, came to the final table as the second biggest stack, and wound up winning the Red Club Championship, as I did this season in season 28. So you're going to see in this video how that strategy in the early levels was utilized, and how after I did get my double up, I managed to take that stack, make it slowly grow to a point where I could really push the table around and really steamroll my way to winning the tournament and the one prize that it was giving out. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say before I start going into the actual hands. If you're new to my tournament reviews, you'll see that there are numbers here and here on each player. I will put up a link, I don't know, maybe here, maybe here, maybe here, I'll surprise myself later, that goes to another video that explains what these numbers actually mean. For those of you who have seen the other videos, you know what they mean, and hopefully we'll do a little more work here in using them in-game and in-hand to decide, to make better decisions on how to play our hand versus our opponents. That being said, I think we are about ready to start. The first thing I do when I get to any new table, and this is obviously a new table because it's the first, well, this is the second hand of the tournament. You can see that there was already one hand played. I'll explain why that happened later. The first thing I do when I get to any tournament table is, you know, get a good lay of the land, see which players I have experience with, which players I have history with, and which players are new that I'm going to have to figure out on the fly before I get a good sample of statistics on them. The number in red in parentheses, that's the number of hands I have on each player, and since this is a tournament featuring all the regular and top Red Club players, especially from season 28, you can see that I have a lot of hands on a lot of players here. I have 2,000 plus hands on FD Caller and Academy and Eradicator I have a lot of history with, and even the ones I have less history with, you know, 979 hands, 600 hands. That's a good sample size to trust the stats that I have on these players. So the stats that I have here, you know, VPIP of 18, pre-flop raise percentage of 8, those can be trusted because of the huge sample size. You'll notice that there are two players at the table that don't have any. I don't have any hands in my database. One of them is me, obviously, and this number will reflect the hands that I play in this tournament only. Obviously, I don't need to know, you know, all the hands I played with myself, because that's kind of irrelevant. But it will show my stats this tournament, and then I can use that to adjust to how people are perceiving the way I'm playing right now. The other player is Coppercliff. That actually surprised me because this name is familiar to me. I don't know who it is in real life, but I'm sure I've seen this name around, and yet I don't have any hands on him in my database. So we will have to, you know, pay close attention to him as the tournament goes on, and, you know, use the numbers that we've accrued on all of these other players to make decisions, to make better decisions with our hand. I think I'm about ready to get started here. I should say before I do that this tournament started at 9:00 p.m. and it wound up finishing around 1:30 a.m. and there were 431 total hands, if I remember correctly, from the first to the last. I'm not going to show all 431 hands. I filtered it out to show only hands that I play. Probably not the hands where someone steals my blind. I don't think I'll show those. But most of the hands, all the hands that I actually play, you'll see. And you'll see significant pots played between other people at the table that aren't me. You know, pots of a substantial size. So you'll get to see, you know, most of the bust outs that I'm at the table for, and most of the big pots that other people play with each other. So, like I said, I'm not showing every single hand. So this is the second hand of the tournament. You can see that Coppercliff already has more than his 3,000 chip stack. And here's someone who lost some chips in the first hand. But generally, everybody has 150 big blinds to start. We are starting at 10 and 20 blinds, and the blinds go up every 20 minutes, which is actually a fairly long. Those are fairly long blind levels compared to other Red Club tournaments. So it'll be interesting to see how these people who are used to shorter blind levels adjust to a slow-moving, very deep stack tournament. With that being said, I think we are ready to go on with the first hand. So We get a limp from early position. If Eradicator had not limped, I probably would have opened for a raise, something in the neighborhood of 42 to 45 chips. I'd like to go a little bit over 2 times the big blind. I could raise here and isolate him, but I decided just to limp along with my low pocket pair, maybe hit a set, maybe outplay some people post flop. I don't want to play too big a pot with a substandard hand when there's already been action in the pot. And we get it. We're going to see a flop 4 ways. I could take a stab here, just trying to see if anyone has a king, but there are 2 people to act behind me and 2 people to act before me, and I don't really feel comfortable bluffing into 4 people. If there were 3 or maybe even 2, I might take a stab here, but as it is, I'm just going to keep the pot small. So trip 6s on the turn. Since nobody took a stab on the flop, you can probably safely assume that nobody has a king, so it's more than likely that I have the best hand here. And I think I should take a stab on the turn, but I don't. That was probably the first mistake. And now we're pretty 100% certain that we have the best hand, so I'm going to take a little value bet on the river, just over half pot, since there's a whole bunch of people in there. We get called by Academy, and he had the old big blind special. So we win our first hand. That's a good start. King 6 we're going to fold, so here's a hand we don't play. Let's see what happens. FT caller comes in for a 6x raise after Donkosaurus limps under the gun. That's a bit of an oversized raise. I'd probably make it somewhere in the neighborhood of 80, 85, 90 maybe. 120, you're just bloating the pot and you're in early position. There's already been some action. Unless you have a really, top 3%, top 5% of hands like queens, kings, or aces. I think this is accomplishing exactly what you don't want, which is bloating the pot. This player is most likely going to call after limping in, and there's so many other people who are, relatively loose players that you're going to create a large multi-way pot, and you're in early position, so you're out of position for most of the rest of the hand. As you can see, Academy calls. We get a cold call from the big blind, and surprisingly, the limper folded after, getting 4 to 1 here. I'm not sure what he's limp folding with there. Okay, so Eradicator leads out for, wow, about 70% pot, gets a flat from FT, and Academy min-raises. We start thinking about what kind of hands they have. What kind of hands does Eradicator have? That oversized pre-flop bet implies that he has a weakish holding, and he wants people to fold, so he's making it a bit larger than half the pot. Maybe he has ace-9, maybe he has 10-9, maybe he has a straight draw or flush draw. I wouldn't put him on a set just yet, especially now that he just flats. FT caller, I don't think he has, a pair bigger than queens, otherwise he probably would have re-raised Eradicator in this spot. I'm thinking jacks or 10s might be most likely. I don't think he would make that pre-flop raise with something like ace-9 or 8s. Most likely I'm thinking jacks or 10s, or maybe he also has, ace-king with the ace-king of hearts, something like that. I think he's going to call as well. So the turn fills in all the flush draws and pairs top pair. Okay, 2 checks, and Academy bombs out for full pot, leaving. This is a math error. There's no reason to bet full pot and leave yourself with 190 chips behind. If you're going to make this bet, just put the other 190 in there, or make a smaller bet to save, say, 1,000 chips. This is anybody who's calling this bet on the turn is this money's going in on the river no matter what happens. As it stands, the bet gets through. We don't even get to see the river, so Academy wins a nice pot without showdown. I'm thinking he had the 9 there. I think he was overplaying top pair, maybe ace-9, top pair, top picker on the flop, raising to see where he was at. Then he got lucky and hit his trips on the turn and just decided to shut everything down right about there. But we'll never know unless Academy decides to, leave leave a comment on the video below and confirm our suspicions. So here's another hand we fold. Huggy Bear limps. Coppercliff makes it 8x. You know, that I would think that takes aces and kings and queens out of his range, because he would probably want some more action with them. So I'm thinking ace king, or you know, tens and jacks, just like we had FT caller on the previous hand. He gets a limp call from Huggy Bear. Well, this certainly hits the jacks and tens pretty hard, doesn't it? And check on the flop, which is unusual since there's 2 spades out there. So even if he had, you know, flopped his set or flopped an overpair, he would bet there. And now he just calls the bet on the turn. Huggy Bear checks, and Coppercliff leads out for full pot on the river. No draws got there. So he, what? Let's see. Well, let's play it out and see what happened. The Huggy Bear calls. He had top pair, and well, as we expected, there's the flop set. So Coppercliff slow played it on the flop, which is, I guess, fine against one person. He doesn't necessarily have to protect against the straight and the flush draws. It probably would have been a good idea to get a little bet out in there, because you know, anybody who limp calls, jacks and tens on the board are well within their calling range there, so he may have lost a street of value, but he made a good bet on the river, betting out full pot and getting a call from a terrible hand. I'm not sure what Huggy Bear was doing there, limping with Jack 7 suited and then calling an 8x. Was it 8x raise, if I remember correctly? So that's a huge lead by Huggy Bear there, and well played by Coppercliff. I'm not sure I agree with his pre-flop bet sizing, but it did the job here and won him a nice big pot. I suspect we're not going to play this hand after a raise and a call. We don't. 4 people do, though. A bet and 2 calls on the flop. With an ace-high board, do they all have aces? Are there some straight draws and flush draws that people are chasing? And now Huggy Bear leads out on the turn when a straight draw came through. Okay, so he's betting, after betting the check calling flop and leading out on the turn, Huggy Bear is leading out again on the river when a king hits for 1/6 of the pot. This is a very polarized bet. Either it means I have a immensely strong hand and I want you to call, so I'm going to bet as little as possible, or I have a marginal hand and I'm going to bet as little as possible as a bluff. Either way, that is a horrible bet, because if he has a strong hand, he's not getting value from it by betting so small, and if he has a bluff, he's not getting enough folds because it's such a small bet. Who would fold to 1/6 of the pot? Coppercliff does not fold. We see that it was the bluff, and Coppercliff wins another nice pot with top pair jack kicker. We get a raise, a 5x from Coppercliff. Now this is these raise sizings. I know that it's early in the tournament and people are trying to prevent, you know, 5-way pots. So they think that raising 5x is going to get a lot more folds than raising 3x or 2.5x or even 2x. All it really does is make it more tempting for someone with a drawing hand to come in, because everybody here is immensely deep. Even the short stack has 61 big blinds, and most of us have 140-ish big blinds. So I would advise against making oversized preflop raises like this. It's just going to cause you problems in the long run. It's okay to keep the pot small and play you know, multi-way pots post-flop and hope that you know the people who are calling with substandard hands are going to pay you off and you can win a nice pot. As it stands, from earlier position, Coppercliff is just bloating the pot here, and that makes it even. Well, this makes it even worse. Assuming that Coppercliff is not too strong, that Eradicator is re-raising him. That signals a lot of strength by Eradicator. But Coppercliff is not scared. He calls. This is a very connected board. I would expect it to hit Coppercliff's range a lot, and if Eradicator has an overpair, he should be taking it kind of slow. He doesn't. Again, he bombs out for 70% of pot. something like that. We get a call. Alright, now we play a little pot control on the turn. Eradicator still could have an overpair. You could have ace king or ace queen and not want to bloat the pot when there's so many draws out there. Alright, this is much like the bet that Huggy Bear made on the previous hand when he had 5 high. If Coppercliff is bluffing, he's not getting anything to fold, and if he's value betting, he's not getting any value for his hand. If he has a jack here, or something like 2 pair or a set, put a little more meat in that pot. Put, you know, bet 400, even bet 375 or 350, something to get value from your strong hand. We know that Eradicator re-raised pre-flop and bet big on the flop, so he has something. Unless he's just out there, you know, bluffing into the big stack, he has something. So why not try to get some value from him? He does call. Coppercliff had the straight, and Eradicator had reasonably played pocket aces. I don't think Eradicator made any mistakes on that hand. I think it was right for him to slow down on the turn when he got called. You know, play some pot control, keep it small. He saved himself a lot of chips. Coppercliff, as I said, I think he was okay until the river, and I don't like his river bet sizing. I think he could have got a lot more value from, well, turns out, from exactly what his opponent had, but he didn't even have to have a hand as strong as pocket aces for Coppercliff to get a lot more value from his straight. Okay, so this is the hand of the early stages of the tournament for me. This is the most important hand that I played, and we'll go through it rather slowly and talk about my decisions for why I played it the way I did. Okay, so big stack 24J is probably the most aggressive player at the table. I'm not even sure I'm as aggressive generally as he is, and I would consider myself one of the more aggressive players at any table. But he likes to raise. He raises a lot, and he likes to make small minimum raises like he does here. He raises 25% of the time, and very rarely does he go more than 2x. So he opens from under the gun after a couple of calls. We'll certainly call with King Queen and hope to hit a big hand and win a big pot from, you know, a deep player here. We got a deep player here. This guy has a lot of chips, and the opening raiser also has a lot of chips. Even Eradicator, who's a oh, he didn't actually call, so never mind. That's Eradicator. Never mind. You don't count in this hand. But there's a lot of players, a lot of deep stacks, and we're basically hoping to hit 2 pair or maybe even a straight. We're not going to play a big pot with, you know, say we hit a queen or even a king. We're hoping to hit something big and get somebody's whole stack. So we flop a gut shot straight draw. Big stack just declines his right to continuation bet, and instead Coppercliff bets 60 into a pot of 210. So now there is 270 chips in the pot. We have to call 60 to hit our inside straight. Here's a quick little lesson on drawing and pot odds calculations. In game, you're gonna have to learn how to do this without Poker Tracker doing it for you. But since we have the numbers in front of us, we'll just use those, and maybe we'll learn about how to calculate pot odds later on, or even after this hand. So we are getting 4.5 to 1 on our money. That's 270 divided by 6. It's 4.5 to 1. 6 goes into 270 4.5 times. That's basically how you do that. 4.5 to 1 translates to 18%. To get that, you take your 4.5 to 1, you divide 1 divided into 1 plus 4.5. So you add these two things together, these two numbers, divide what is essentially the denominator, or sorry, this is the numerator, and that'll give you 18%. So 1 divided by 5.5 is 18%. Basically, what that means is, if we are going to win the pot more than 18% of the time, we're getting the right price to call here. If we're going to win the pot less than 18% of the time, then we're getting the wrong price to call. There are some caveats that I'll talk about afterwards, and they're very important with how I play the hand. So we figured out our pot odds are 18%. We have to win the pot 18% of the time. How often do we think we're going to win the pot with what we have here? Well, it's probably safe to assume that if we hit a pair, it's no good. Somebody has an ace, you know. So basically, we're looking to hit our jack. There are 4 jacks in the deck, 4 jacks that we haven't seen yet. You know, somebody here may have a jack, but we don't know that. So there are 4 jacks in the deck. There are 47 cards we haven't seen. You know, here's 3, here's 2. That equals 5 cards we've seen. There are 52 cards in the deck. 52 minus 5 is 47 cards we haven't seen yet. 4 of those give us the nuts. The Jack of Clubs could be problematic, but we have the Queen of Clubs to back that up. But let's just assume that 4 of those, there are 4 cards in the deck that give us the hand we want, that we think will win the hand. 4 into 47 is about 8-9%, something like that. So we've seen that we need a price of 18% or greater to make this call profitable. We're only going to win the pot 8% of the time. So that stands to reason that we should fold to this, even though it's a relatively small bet, right? Well, yes and no. If Coppercliff had no money behind, if he just went all in for his last 60 chips and we have to make a pot odds call here, then it's probably the wrong call, mathematically. However, Coppercliff has 6,000 chips behind. The 2 guys over here have 3,000 and 3,900 chips behind. We ourselves have 3,000 chips behind. Those chips behind create a situation that is known as implied odds. Not only do we have to consider the pot odds, you know, this money that's already in the pot, but the implication is if we hit our hand, we can win a substantial portion of the stacks that these players have behind. And the deeper the stacks they have behind, the more likely we are going to win a big pot and make our 18 versus 8% pot odds decision a lot more profitable. So there's 270 in the pot, but you know, if we hit our jack and somebody decides to overplay 2 pair, we could win this 270 plus, you know, double up, and that's another 3,000. So that makes our immediate pot odds decision, which we discovered was an incorrect decision, turns that into a slam dunk call. We're only gambling 60 chips, you know, we're super deep. If we hit that jack, we're off to the races, and hopefully somebody, you know, maybe it's Coppercliff, maybe it's one of these guys, but hopefully somebody puts a lot of their stack in when we have the nuts. So we're going to call here. We could also get a call from Academy, and Big Stack, who was the pre-flop raiser, surprisingly decides to fold. And it's Christmas, because now we have the nuts, the Broadway straight, and we're going to do our best now to get a return on that implied pot odds decision that we made on the flop. Now the goal is not just to win the 390 chips that are in the pot, but to win all the chips that these guys have behind, as many as possible. Obviously, as many as possible means we can only win 3,020 of them because that's what our stack is. But you know, we're going to do our best here to get a good return on that flop implied odds call. So Academy starts with a check. Coppercliff again makes a small lead. Side note, he does this kind of small lead and then same size lead on the turn a lot throughout this tournament. Sometimes I pick up on it and make him pay for that. And I'll mention those spots when they come up. But there's a stage in the tournament when I should be taking advantage of it a bit more, and I will talk about those spots when they come up. So just be wary of that when it happens. The hand in question, he's betting 60 chips into 390 chips. That's like 6.5 to 1. We're obviously going to at least call, but like I said, now we want to make the pot as big as possible, with the hopes that, you know, one or both of these guys come along and we win a big pot because of it. So we're going to raise here. Do we think Coppercliff has enough to call a big raise? Well, he let out on the flop and on the turn, so, you know, At this moment in the hand, it's probably a good assumption. So let's make a big raise. We make it 4 1/4 times his opening. And hopefully he has enough to come along here. That's the best situation. It gets even better when, Academy decides to make a small, super small 3-bet, and now we're just, our mouth is watering, we're drooling all over the place, we're dreaming of Vegas and the Mirage, and all we have to do is figure out how to get, our focus now is on Academy stack, and hopefully we can get all that into the middle with, while we have the nuts. So now Coppercliff folds, which, as I said, he was doing a lot of leading like this and fold into action. You don't necessarily have to put a guy in a strong hand when he leads small twice like this. Sometimes they're just, trying to bluff as small as possible, and hopefully they get folds. And if they don't get folds, they've gotten away with it for as little as possible. But he's out of the hand, so let's concern ourselves with Academy. And this is a situation where experience and history and a read on a player comes in handy, because I have 2,300 hands on Academy. I've played with him a lot. I've recognized that when he bets, he does not like to fold. When he puts in big bets, he was willing to put even more chips in the middle, no matter how marginal his hand may be. He could be doing this with a hand as marginal as Ace Queen, or maybe he has, Jack 10 and he rivered 2 pair, and now he's probably going to go with hands like that. So I'm going to put in another raise here with the hopes that he gets the rest of his chips into the middle. So what sizing did we choose? Basically just double his bet. I probably could have gone as high as 1,400 and still given him room to go all in if he chose to. I think all the money's going in. If he just calls here, I think all the money's going in on the turn anyway, but I think I'd rather get all the money in now. So going a bit higher, going to 1,300 or 1,400 and letting him shove all in for his 3,700 total would have been a better play. I think my sizing was a bit small here. I was trying to be a bit too cute. Luckily, it worked. He shoves. I happily call. Neither flush draw comes in, and we win versus his dummy end of the straight. I think his first raise on the flop, when we had 60 here, I made it 285, and he made it 510. I think that raise was fine, given he had a straight. But once I make the raise to, when I re-raise him again to, what did I make it, 1,090 or something, that's when he has to start to consider the texture of the board and what I could be playing this way. And there aren't many hands that, even though he has a straight, there aren't many hands that he beats given the action that I'm giving him. So I don't like the shove. He may have called my 4-bet on the flop and reevaluated on the turn, but going all in there was a huge mistake. Maybe he was thinking the way I was thinking, in that, let me get some big chips early, and if I don't get those big chips early, go home. But considering the player and the way he's played this kind of hand in this kind of situation in the past, I don't think that was going through his head. I think his thought process was, I have a straight, whatever, I'm going all in. Straights don't come around often enough for me to fold them. I'm just going to go all in and see what happens. And what happens was, he gave me all his chips. So now I have double up fairly early in the tournament. I think this was still the first level of the tournament, so that's a great situation.